Hi, I'm Danny Ramos, and welcome to this week's edition of Hispanic Speak Out TV, brought to you every week on Bright House Cable 49. Our TV show covers issues of interest to the Hispanic community and the general political community. Today, we're here again with Tony Suarez. Tony Suarez is a leading attorney in Central Florida. He has a daily radio show on 10:30 a.m. in the Spanish language, sometimes bilingual, and he was an elected representative in the state legislature. Hi, Tony. How are you?
How you doing, Danny?
What's going on with politics in Central Florida? What's the redistricting is still in motion?
Redistricting is still in motion. A lot of testimony being taken on the county commission as well as city council and school board. So they're redrawing all the lines all over the place. So there's a lot of interesting things going on with that. And of course, the latest is the presidential primaries coming to town. So they've the presidential candidates for the Republican Party are hitting the town and see where it goes. It's going to probably make or break a couple of campaigns.
The redistricting, who is the mechanism? What is the mechanism that makes the final decision on where those lines actually are drawn?
Yeah, the tough question, right away. Well, the line is going to be drawn politically because politicians draw the lines, and they're the ones that will determine. Now, they ask for community input, so it looks like democracy, and so everyone will just put their input there. The line should be drawn here, line should be drawn there, but ultimately it'll be drawn. The incumbents are sitting there, protecting their own seats and ensuring that they get reelected. That's what it's about. That's been about that way.
So then, what's the point?
Well, because we have to give it an appearance that we're doing the right thing. So we have to go through the process of having hearings, and everybody can yell and scream, and everybody can, wear the T-hats and all these stuff that the people love to do, and then the politicians will do what they always do, and then so it's the process.
So are you saying that all this talk about having a new minority congressional district is kind of really hoopla to a large degree?
It will happen if the powers that be, which in this state is the state of the Republican Party, want it to happen. If the Republicans don't want it to happen, it will not happen. That's why they have, ever since 1965, since they passed the Civil Rights Act, there has been litigation every 10 years. I expect to be no different this time. There'll be more litigation as the people who are interested are fighting for it. So far, I'll give you an example here in the county commission that's going to draw the new district in Orange County. Now, in Orange County, the Hispanic community is looking for a district similar to what the African American community have, a district which is heavily ethnic oriented, so the opportunity probability of getting a Hispanic elected are higher if you put more Hispanics in the district. Now, there is no Hispanic on the county commission, so any county commission plan that has a district that's 50% or more Hispanic is going to mean that some incumbent probably loses his job. Who's going to vote for that? Nobody. So therefore, what's going to happen is they're not going to draw a district as Hispanic. We'll have to go into a lawsuit to see whether or not the Civil Rights Act protects us and whether or not the Florida Constitution was changed last year is any prohibition to the district. So all that being said and done, power will always keep itself in power. Those who want power have to fight for it, either politically or through the courts.
All right, let's go back to the congressional seat.
Okay.
So you're saying Republicans pull the chain here. Okay?
Right.
The reality is, do Republicans want a Hispanic, considering that traditionally Hispanics are Democratic? So are they going to, Republicans, do you think Republicans, because they want the Hispanic vote too, so do you think that they're going to allow that to happen, or they're going to play the safe side and try not to approve a congressional Hispanic district, knowing that Obama is waiting for that?
Okay, let me try to do this without confusing everybody out there who's listening to this show. The Republican Party wants to maintain majority of Republicans get elected. So if in Central Florida, unlike South Florida, where the Hispanics, who are mostly Cubans, are Republicans, here in Central Florida, most Hispanics are Puerto Rican and Democrats. Now, if you want to keep the districts, the majority of the districts, Republican, well, then you pack the Democrats into one district. You say to the Democrats, okay, that's your district, but still all the districts around are Republican, and we are in the majority. And that's all they have to have is the majority. So now, if they pack a district with all the Hispanic Democrats, and the Hispanic Democrats get one representative, the Hispanics will be happy right? And the Republicans could be happy because they have all the surrounding districts Republicans. So in that case, the mathematics works. However, and since we have an additional seat coming into Central Florida, well, we believe we have an additional seat coming to Central Florida, that formula could work. So it's a possibility the Hispanic district could work. But that depends on all the surrounding congressmen and all the other legislators saying, okay, let's make that happen. And so, it seems to me the groundwork is set that it could happen, because it actually benefits the Republican majority in the Florida House of Representatives and the Senate to draw that way. But if for whatever reason, let's say a Dean Cannon, who is the Speaker, decides he wants to run for Congress, and he doesn't want a district as heavily, he wants this new seat to be more diverse, so he has a shot at winning it in the primary, well, then the Hispanic district will not happen.
Yeah, Dean Cannon had for the first time a Hispanic challenger.
Yes, sir.
A young woman from New York came in and she ran against him.
Right.
And she's going to run again. I understand she's going to do it again.
Right.
So Hispanics are becoming very, very visible and very aggressive in politics here.
Well, that's the history. Those of us who came from New York, like you and I, and that's been part of the movement to get involved. This is our home. We're actually, many of us are English dominant than we are Spanish dominant. But at the same time, we'd like to have someone who understands El Ay Bendito, that our community so much is endeared to. So that desire to have someone that looks like you, thinks like you, eats roast pork like you, and arroz con habichuela, that kind of desire still be there, and that's why the movement is there. That's what launched the civil rights movement.
There's always been political interest by groups.
Yeah.
Because groups tend to support financially their own communities.
Right.
That's been tradition.
When I was testifying before the Orange County Commission on the redistricting plan, on redistricting, one of the commissioners was very offended. She says, when she saw my plan, and she says, "You obviously don't care about protecting our communities of interest because you cut up Pine Castle and you cut up Conway." And I looked at her and I said to her, "Madam, the difference is that I have my community interest and you have your community interest. And therefore, in order to protect my community interest, we have to divide your community interest. And I understand that you want to protect your own community. That's why we have other forums vis-a-vis, lawsuits." And that's what I was trying to imply.
So you think this whole thing is going to go down into the courts?
No doubt.
No doubt about it.
No doubt about it.
So how long do you think the whole process will take?
About 3 years is typical.
You're kidding.
Oh yeah, because it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. I mean, remember Osceola County and Kissimmee, that went locally and they didn't appeal anymore, so it did get resolved at the local level. But this issue is already, Kareem Brown and Mario Diaz-Balart have already sued, are in federal court on the issue whether the Florida constitutional changes trump the Civil Rights Act, a federal law. That's already in the works. So when we start redrawing these lines, someone is ox is going to get gored. I mean, it's inevitable. You can't. It's really a sum zero. There's only so many districts. There's so many areas you have to draw. Someone's going to get messed up. All right. So it's a question of who's going to go into court, you or me.
So if someone's going to get gored, okay, then both systems, Republican and Democratic, pre-decided who that would be.
Yes, of course.
So they're throwing out a lamb for slaughter.
Those lines have already been drawn. This is all a show. I'm telling you, it's all a show. They have public hearings, but the deal has already been done.
It's already been
done.
Okay. And it's all going to end up in court anyway.
And it's all going to end up in court anyway.
And what is the mechanism that takes them to court? Is it the guy who's getting gored?
Right. The guy who's getting gored will bring the lawsuit. So, for example, in the past, in North Carolina, they've had these districts, much like we have our here, Congressional District 3, which starts in Orange, Orlando, goes all the way to Jacksonville. They have similar districts like that in North Carolina. In an attempt to draw a district which is heavily African American, they strung together a series of precincts from one coast to another, trying to make a district. Now, the white people who get put into that district have brought lawsuits, okay, saying, why are you excluding me? Mm-hmm. And so that will happen. So if you're being taken out, as for example, we divide Pine Castle, we divide Conway to create a Hispanic district. Well, the guy who's in Conway who got put into his Hispanic district is to say, wait, why'd you do that to me? I want to be over where I was with Dan Webster, for example. Mm-hmm. And so he'll sue. And then if we don't get the district that we want, well, then we sue. So, and then the judge will make a determination.
Wow. Politics as usual. I had James Off on here last week and we were talking about politics, you know, and we're talking about how much money flows through the Congress to sway congressional votes and sway congressional opinion. And basically, what you just said about this circumstance, he said about other issues, and that is that there is a perception that there is a democracy, but the reality is that there are very powerful people that make the final decisions for us. And it's very rare when the people get to make a decision. And all those decisions are made by influential people that have something to gain in the process.
Right. Well, there are lots of interesting books that your readers could, or followers could see. The most recent one, The Making of America, and it talks about how much influence the dollars are in Washington. They are, when I was a representative, the reason they call these people lobbyists is because they're literally hanging in the lobby. As soon as you walk out of the chambers, they grab you. And in Tallahassee, there were, I mean, hundreds. It was so many lobbyists, Danny. The minute I walked out to try to get to the elevators, you were being assaulted by dozens of people on any number of issues. And in Washington, there's thousands of lobbyists. So they move it. And you know, you and I are worrying about, you know, oh my God, the leak in the kitchen, and and I've got a cockroach over here, and I gotta go to work, and you got all these life problems that you can't concentrate on what the lobbyists are being paid big money is to concentrate on.
I know that lobbyists are probably controlling America right now because no matter what, it's turned into a money game. When you run for office, if you're running for a congressional seat, if you're running for national office, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars. I think Obama...
No, how about billions?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they say Obama's going to raise $1 billion.
$1 billion to run for office. I think he had, the last count, he had almost 200 million, something like that.
It's obscene.
And where does that money come from? I mean, and the reality was that they had put ceilings on what you can spend, what a candidate can spend, and they just voted in to do it a different way.
Right. That's
create political PACs.
Correct. Right. So you again, part of the game. Oh, we want to do reform. You got to cut the money, so we'll only allow you to give $1,000 maximum donation. Directly. Okay. Now, indirectly, you can give as much as you want. Right. And then it's all silly, because the truth is, I'm a First Amendment. I believe you have the right. You should be able to spend $1 billion on a candidate if you believe it's your money, it's a freedom of expression, we're a free nation. And so I have a quandary about restricting people's right to spend their money. On the other hand, we could do it without doing it. And Europe has, in England in particular, you can spend all the money you want, but you only have 3 months within which to do it. They open the campaign season in one period, and then 3 months later, the elections are there. We could do the same thing. No limitations on how much money Tony Suarez or Danny Ramos want to give to their candidate. The problem is he could only spend it from September to November in election. After that, you cannot. That would limit the amount of money you could spend. But you know why that won't happen? Because the televisions and the newspapers will never allow it to happen, because the beneficiary of that $1 billion that Obama is going to raise is the media.
Is the media. Is the media. Doesn't it disenfranchise the poor?
Of course.
Okay, I just wanted you to say it. So we're still in a country where the rich get richer and the poor stay poor. Is that what we're saying here? Because if you can't control power, then you're on the back end of the stick.
I was reading an article, Tay's Wall Street Journal. It talks about the economy. It says the economy has become like an hourglass. Heavy on the top, very thin middle class, and heavy in the bottom. In fact, Procter & Gamble is now changing its marketing, understanding the middle class doesn't have the purchasing power it used to have. So they're taking some of their products and downing so that what was the middle class, now the lower middle class, can shop for them. So it's now become a knowledgeable among the economists, you know, as they produce their products, that they've got to, more people become poor.
Yeah, you can see that with supermarkets and the buying trends. Walmart has been growing tremendously, and it's
dollar stores are growing.
Dollar stores, I see them all over the place.
But you go to Macy's and they got a problem with the lower end stuff. So now they're going to do away with the lower end stuff and just concentrate on the high end stuff.
Yeah, but they still have tremendous overhead.
Well,
you know, they have a tremendous overhead. You walk into a Macy's anytime, the place is empty. Yeah. I mean, I haven't walked into a Macy's in a year, and I go there once a month. you know, and the place is
Yeah, but if you're going to spend
absolutely empty.
but if you sell a shirt for $150 to some guy who doesn't mind spending $150, you covered the overhead. And meanwhile, the other guy who say, I'm not spending $150, I'm going to K&G, man, for $15. Well,
Ross.
or Ross. I'm going to Ross. Well, that guy, he'll spend the $15, but the guy in Macy's, he doesn't care because $150 makes no difference. It's like $15 to us.
How do you perceive the economy in the next 10 years? Do you think it's going to contract to the point of America losing its position in the world because we are sending so many jobs overseas, we're buying everything? Eventually, since we're buying everything abroad, eventually what's going to happen is they're becoming more powerful and we're becoming less powerful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not an economist. I want to limit my opinion to this, but I can see that no country who has been great in debt gets greater. That happened to the Romans and happened to the Greeks. The Roman, I have a wonderful quote
right now.
I have a great quote from Cicero that talked about the beginning of the decline of the Roman Empire, precisely because it was committed to so many wars and was spending so much money on soldiers and stuff that do not produce. And this country doesn't produce much anymore now. We produce wars. We have produced guns and bombs, but we're not producing much of anything else. Meanwhile, China is in fact producing. We're buying everything China can produce, and they're paying us with our inflated money. I mean, you know, this is great. They got the greatest monopoly game going, and so I don't see that trend changing because our government doesn't want to change it.
Is that corporate America's fault? Whose fault is that?
No, I
is
really,
that the capitalistic system?
Yeah, I think it's I really think it's the failure of the education of our voters, because we keep voting people in who want to give the government, you know, politicians who want to give us more. So everyone's sitting around, give me, give me, give me, and so our budgets are being inflated on doing things that we don't pay for. And eventually, because we're not producing and we're just giving, it'll collapse. Mm-hmm. So we need to produce.
That's a nasty word.
What?
It will collapse.
It will collapse. I think it will collapse. I think it's only a question of time. But whether it's now one generation or two generations.
You're talking about the country?
The country, I think,
okay.
Because the dollar is not sustainable, Danny. The dollar has nothing behind it. There's no gold, silver, anything. It's only the full faith and credit of the country. And what we're doing, since we are literally printing money, every time we print more money, you inflate the dollar. So what's happened is that the $100 that was worth something 10 years ago, today can buy a tank of gas. God, it cost me $65 to fill my gasoline tank. So what does that mean? I mean, dollars are worth less. So eventually the dollars are, if you can't catch up, your personal income cannot catch up to the rate of inflation, where's it going to go? You're a slave. You're just going to be working day to day just to put food in your mouth.
Okay. We're going to fade in, we're going to fade out. We're going to bring an expert on Medicaid and Medicare to talk about that. We're going to fade in, fade out. We'll be back in 1 second. We're with Paul Potter. Paul Potter represents an insurance agency, and he's here to talk a little bit about Medicare and Medicaid, and which is a very frightening topic right now to Americans who are in that era of reaching 60 years old, because they're talking about, the war is going on right now in the Congress about talking about cutting these services. But I want to talk a little bit about what you actually are entitled to today. What kind of services, if you're going into the age of 60, 65, what are you entitled to at this point? Paul is going to make it very clear for us. Paul?
That's a big item to try to get all in one little time here. Probably the best thing to think of when we think of insurance, when we think about Medicare health insurance, we think of it as being something so unusual, mostly because most of us have never had to deal with that until we get to the 60 years old, 65 years old. And so what people think is so big and scary is simply nothing more than an insurance company that just happens to be run by the federal government. I tell people, if you can get that concept down, that will make things a lot easier, because we're so used to dealing with paying a premium, which we're going to do under Medicare, which we'll continue to do under Medicare, having deductibles and copays, and having some portion that's going to be our responsibility. It just so happens to be that this is a insurance company that's owned by the federal government.
You have a Medicaid A. What do you get under A?
Okay. Under Medicare Part A, for those people who are turning 65, or if somebody goes on to some long-term disability, you're going to have Medicare Part A that you're going to get. You get that because after your time of working, when Medicare or when money is being taken out of your paycheck for Medicare, that is for your Part A. We think of it as hospitalization. If you can just say Medicare Part A is hospitalization, covering you in the hospital or a skilled nursing facility, you got it.
And you get 100%.
Not 100%. You're
Okay.
still going to have your deductibles and your co-pays.
Okay.
And that changes every year.
Okay. And that changes according to law passed or what?
More inflation.
More inflation?
Yes.
Okay. Medicaid B is outside the hospital.
Medicare Part B is what we would think of as seeing a doctor. And we're going to have a deductible and a copay there also. What's different about Medicare Part B is that we were never paying for that before. So when it comes down to your Medicare Part B, you will, in 2011, people were going to be paying $115.40 a month. Next year it'll be a little bit more. So you're going to be paying for that on a monthly basis also.
Okay. And there's an Advantage plan, correct?
Yes. What you'll see with Medicare Advantage plans are probably the best way to think of it is that where Medicare is paying an insurance company to take over with the portion that Medicare was otherwise doing. And I know a lot of this can be very confusing for people. The thing that I probably can't emphasize enough is that whether you go with Medicare, a Medicare supplement, Medicare Advantage plans, the price is the same whether you buy this over the phone, whether you buy this on the internet, or whether you have somebody come out and talk to you. And to me, it's a lot easier for me to sit down and have somebody show me everything and go through all this, because it can be it seems like it's daunting, but it's not.
Well, you start getting all these books in the mail, booklets and all this. All of a sudden you get, you turn a certain age. And
Everybody knows you're turning 65.
Everybody on this planet knows because you're getting all this mail.
That's
You
right.
get a tremendous amount of mail.
Yes.
You don't, oh, it's 40 pages. I'll read that later.
Yes.
You got to read it.
Well, and you can also have somebody come out from different companies and tell you what those plans look like. And that makes it so much easier. And there is a certain time of year, which we're coming into right now, October the 15th through this year going to be December the 7th, where people can make their choices. And probably another thing that would be good to bring up, we think of when we're making our decisions as being decisions that are going to be for life. You have just like with your insurance now, before you're 65, you have an annual enrollment period. You can always change your plans at the end of the year if you have Medicare Advantage and a drug plan.
Now, you can buy gap insurance.
Yes.
In other words, to cover those deductibles, to cover those, you can actually go to a private insurance company.
Yes.
And buy a plan to fill in those gaps so you have 100% coverage.
Yes. This is where, if you look at, and from the perspective that I sit and I see, and looking at these different plans that are out there, clearly Medicare has worked very hard to make sure that you have, I call it the East and the West. There is something that's out there for everybody. There are different plans, and people will oftentimes ask, am I better to get a plan that has that's going to be picking up and covering the gaps, or to do a Medicare Advantage? And this may sound to most people like ABC, NBC, all this crazy stuff. But we want to ask, is the insurance good? And I promise everybody that insurance is good for somebody. The proper question that we should be asking is, the way that I feel comfortable with insurance, which plan is best for me? And there is plans that are as different from 180 degrees different from each other. So there is something that's out there that's going to fit or very closely to what your needs are going to be.
Okay, I'm going to ask him a question about this because I don't want to put you in a hot seat.
Thank you.
But you can tell me if I'm wrong or right. A person that makes $180,000 a year gets the same insurance from the federal government of a person that's in poverty. In other words, your A and B covers a person the same way that's making 180 grand a year. A person can be eligible for A and B up to $180,000 of income.
Yeah, what you're speaking of.
The list. Go ahead. Because he doesn't want to get me into this.
It's known as a means test, and if for an individual it's 85, for married filing jointly it's 180,000, and if you're making more than that, then you're going to be paying more. up to that,
Up to
you're making,
$179,999.
right, that you're going to be
The
paying
federal
the same.
government treats you the same way for the whole group, no matter where you are on that economic slide.
Yes, with an exception, and that is for that lower end of the slide. There's going to be this is where Medicaid is going to come in, and the means test is going to fit on the other side of that, where somebody might have, they're going to be treated from the federal government the same way, but Medicaid is now going to come in and help them pay for either portions of their drugs or all of their drugs and portions of their Part
Isn't
B
that nice?
premium. Okay.
What were you going to say, Tony?
No,
You look like
we don't
you
have enough
something to
time
say.
for this
No,
thing.
but wait a second.
Okay, I was on a panel appointed by Jeb Bush where we toured the state, taking the suggestions of how we can save money from the contributions the state makes, and it is such a mess, Danny. You want to explore this, and you need some real time. Start looking as to how this all happened, because between the insurance companies and the hospitals have made such a mess of our system that we have the highest, most expensive system in the world, and we don't have the best system in the world because other nations have higher life expectancies, if you use that as a guidance, than we do. So I mean, there's really not enough time, and it'd be unfair to touch the subject, by doing one topic. But I could go and just, little things like, if you're on insurance, you get an X-ray at $500, but if you pay it out of your pocket, it's $200. Well, the insurance is more expensive for insurance. I mean, if I pay it out of my pocket, well, hey, whatever happened to the doctor's visit at your house? Who has a house visit by a doctor now? Never. Now, it used to be. I remember house visits, but not anymore, because insurance companies have grabbed the entire market, and the medical system is now a captive of the insurance market. People don't shop for their medical. They go wherever the plan tells them to go. So, it's not like saying, doctor, how much are you going to charge me for, appendectomy or something like that? No, you go and they pay whatever the plan. So the doctors are grouped in plans. Look, believe me, I can't get enough time to talk to you about this thing.
My new best friend.
Listen, one more thing. When is Mildred Fernandez's case coming up for court?
October 24th, we're scheduled for trial, and so we've got a lot of time between now and then to a lot of work.
You have a lot of work to do?
A lot of work. It's consuming all my days now.
Really? Is it your only account?
Yes. It's one of the interesting things that you take in a very high-profile case. It's great for your practice, great for your ego. You're recognized as a prominent practitioner. On the other side, there's not enough money in the world for them to pay you. I don't represent the rich person, and I've got to work as hard as if they were Donald Trump, and so a lot of it's a big case, and so literally I have a file larger than this desk. And just putting it all together and then scheduling your witnesses, and interviewing and looking at all the potential parameters. It's a lot of work, Dan. I can't wait for it all to be over.
I'm going to ask you one question. Yes or no? Is she innocent?
Yes, she's innocent.
Okay. This is Danny Ramos. We're out of time. This is Danny Ramos, Hispanic Speak Out TV. Don't forget to get your Hispanic Achiever license plate down at the DMV. It's the first Hispanic license plate in the nation. All the proceeds from that plate go to help nonprofit community organizations throughout the state. It's the Hispanic Achiever plate, the first Hispanic license plate in the nation. Okay, this is Danny Ramos, Hispanic Speak Out. We'll see you next week. Bye.